1 second to pull up my card. Hi everyone, my name is Victoria Taylor, and this is my screencast about tobacco and alcohol advertising. So I'm just going to get this started. First of all, I think that tobacco and alcohol advertisement should be prohibited. I do not believe that they are something that is a good part of our society and that we should do something about it. I cannot remember a time when I did not know what Budweiser was. And that's just a really crazy thing to kind of live with. In this video, I will discuss why I think alcohol and tobacco should not be allowed to advertise. I think this because of the kind of advertising affects kids, has a racial leaning, and the communities that should be purchasing these products are already informed. Let's move on to the first issue with tobacco and alcohol advertising. It affects kids. I just think that's a really important place to start. One study, there was research that proved that exposure to in-store beer displays and alcoholic beverage advertisements in magazines increased drinking by 9th grade in non-drinking 7th graders. So that means in 7th grade, these kids didn't drink, and just 2 years later, they were already drinking. And that's a really young age to be doing that. And that statistic was found in Ellickson, Collins, Hambarsunians, hope I'm saying that right, and McCaffrey, 2005. So that's just a really interesting thing to kind of consider about all this. Anyone who has worked with kids, which is something I have experience in, knows that they are easily susceptible to any kind of pressure. So if it's not just peer pressure, it's media pressure. So whatever is kind of coming at them is definitely going to affect them really strongly. And I personally feel that anything that affects adolescents or children is not something that needs to be in our society. Now that we've discussed this kind of advertising and how it affects kids, let's move on to my next point. Alcohol is racist. In an article in Ethnicity and Health says, youth attending schools with 20% or more Hispanic students were exposed to 5.6 times more alcohol advertising than students attending schools with less than 20% Hispanic students. And that's from Parsh, Comro, Perry, Hurst, and Farbash. Once again, hope I'm saying all this right. And that was in 2009. That's just a really crazy thing to me, that just because of being a child, being a kid, and depending on where you grow up, being more susceptible to that kind of advertising. And if we've just already established that that kind of advertising does affect kids, the fact that it would also be racially skewed is really scary to me. It is no secret that there is still a lot of mistreatment of the minorities in our country, and that this is only perpetuating the problem. This is only leading to there being more tobacco and alcohol issues in the parts of our country that do have more minorities, which is just really devastating. In our textbook, they also discuss tobacco advertising and how they're kind of moving to Asia because the U.S. has started to have a little bit of issue with it, started recognizing how harmful smoking is, so they turned to Asia. And for me, that was just so scary because European and American culture is looked on so highly from Asian culture, so this means that they're just automatically going to think it's a good idea. 66% of Chinese men and 10% of Chinese women are actually smoking now, which just really shows how much the advertising is working. And since we have seen how alcohol and tobacco are racist, let's move on to my last point. My last point is that people know about it. I do not personally take issue with drinking, and I understand that some people choose to smoke. But the people that should be doing those things know where to find it. They know where the liquor stores are. They know where the stores are that sell tobacco. So I'm not really sure why we need advertising just anywhere. I've been to AA meetings, and I see how difficult it is for people who have issues with addiction to have to constantly see it, and I would just really disappointed that it's still something that's broadcasted everywhere, and it's really hard to avoid. And then touching on all of these things, makes me really think about the First Amendment. But the First Amendment was created for people to have freedom of speech and to have a voice who were voiceless and who had problems, not just to give advertisements to something that's dangerous. Since all my points have been covered, let's conclude. In this video, I've shared why I think alcohol and tobacco companies should not be allowed to advertise. I've explained this kind of advertising affects kids, has a racial leaning, and the populations purchasing these products are already informed about them. As I said at the beginning, I cannot remember a time when I didn't know what Budweiser was. Unfortunately, for many years, it was only associated with Clydesdales and Christmas, and I didn't really understand the dangers of alcohol. Let's not continue to let this happen. Thank you.